Sam Ansel presents Your Pain Is Now Mine. This is not just a story about music. It's a story about ego, irony, compassion, and the moment two broken voices chose to heal the world together. In the heart of New York, a rising street singer mocks a homeless man for losing his tooth, until the same fate hits her the night before the biggest performance of her life. What follows is a powerful tale of redemption, unity, and art that no longer asks, but gives. You'll witness a live stage confession, a duet that breaks the internet, and the rebirth of two artists who choose to offer love instead of beg for attention. For many who reach the end of this story, something unexpected happens. One word transforms a life. Another begins to transform the world. Quietly. Powerfully. I suggest you listen to this story immersively, as if I was walking you home, sharing an umbrella with you, and speaking softly along the way. Chapter 1: The Lifted Shirt. It was one of those New York summer days when the heat sticks to your skin like regret. I just arrived near Bryant Park, my usual corner, still wiping sweat from the back of my neck. The morning crowd buzzed around like it always did, caffeine-fueled commuters, tourists with phones out, street cleaners in no mood for music. I opened my guitar case, trying to find the sweet spot for acoustics and foot traffic, when I felt the weight of last night's coins, heavier than usual. Maybe it had been a good set after all. I smiled to myself, lifted the case over my head to lay it down behind me, and that's when it happened. My shirt lifted. Not all the way. Just a sliver. Maybe an inch of skin above the belt. A flash of stomach, exposed not by intention, but by necessity. That's when I heard it. "There are ladies present," a voice snapped behind me. I turned. June. I recognized her instantly. A fellow busker. A voice that could slice silence like a scalpel. Long brown hair tied into a perfect knot. Eyes that scanned you like you were being graded. She always dressed sharp. Blazer one day, tailored jeans the next. And a voice smooth enough to melt steel. She had her guitar slung across her body like a badge of honor, and that look of moral authority. "You should be more composed," she added, adjusting her guitar strap like she was straightening a crown. I blinked. The air hung thick between us. My shirt had already fallen back into place. I hadn't even realized it had risen. But the tone in her voice, it stayed with me. Cold. Final. Like I'd crossed an invisible line. And I felt ashamed. For what, exactly? For a second of accidental skin? For not matching her imagined decorum? I nodded, not because I agreed, but because I didn't want to make a scene. I strummed a few warm-up chords and tried to let it go. But her words echoed louder than my strings. The next morning, I took a different route. Just needed a breath of fresh rhythm. Turned the corner, and there she was, again. But this time, she wasn't the guardian of modesty. She was the queen of contradiction. June stood in the middle of the plaza, laughing with the tambourine player. Her shirt? Cropped. Bright green. It stopped inches above her waist. Her midriff glowed under the morning sun, smooth, deliberate, confident. She twirled, guitar bouncing against her side, singing something playful and loose. And no one said a word. Not one gasp. Not one judgmental glance. Not one shamed whisper of, "There are gentlemen present." I watched. Not out of spite, but out of sheer disbelief. There she was, basking in the kind of self-expression she'd condemned 24 hours earlier. And I stood there, a silent witness to the dissonance. I didn't confront her. Didn't mention it. Just found my corner, set up my gear, and let my chords carry my confusion. But something shifted that morning. A crack appeared in the image I'd held of her. Not because she showed skin, but because she tried to shame me for something she'd later flaunt with pride. Some people build walls to feel safe. Others build mirrors. That day, June showed me she only liked mirrors when she was the one doing the posing. I knew then this city, and this story, had more layers than a heatwave and a hoodie. Something had begun. And June? She was only getting started. Chapter 2: Ricky and the Rotten Tooth. Ricky was the kind of man you noticed whether you wanted to or not. Not because he shouted, though he sometimes did. Not because he begged, though he never hesitated to ask. It was because Ricky didn't seem to belong to the city the way the rest of us did. While we were all trying to climb, blend in, or survive, Ricky just was. He existed like a worn bench or a stubborn weed breaking through the sidewalk. I met him on a rainy Thursday. He asked if I had a protein bar. Not money, a protein bar. Said he didn't trust sandwiches. Too many lies in the bread. He joked, dead serious and grinning. I laughed and handed him one from my pack. He looked at me like I'd offered him a family heirloom. From that day on, Ricky became a regular shadow near my sets. He wasn't dangerous, just persistent. He had this way of standing too close, talking during songs, telling wild stories about his dreams or his past, sometimes both at once. Some days he cheered me on like I was Springsteen. Other days he interrupted just to tell me about a cloud that looked like Aretha Franklin holding a sandwich. I tried to be kind. But he was a lot. One afternoon, I finished a quiet set. Barely enough foot traffic to call it a gig. I started packing up when Ricky appeared, carrying a crumpled flyer and a half-eaten banana. "You know who you remind me of?" he said. "Who?" He grinned a wide, toothy grin, or at least, it used to be. One of his front teeth was now missing. Blackened and broken the week before. Now simply gone. A small empty space that seemed bigger than it should have been. That night, I mentioned it to June. "Ricky's getting intense," I said, more to vent than anything. She nodded without looking up from her tuner. "Yeah. I know." Then she looked at me, sideways, almost playfully, and said, "You see his tooth?" I hesitated. "Yeah." She smirked. "Guess karma bit him back." She laughed. Not cruelly, but with a hint of satisfaction. Like watching the villain in a movie finally trip over his own arrogance. And something about it chilled me. Because Ricky wasn't a villain. He was just exhausted. Human. Trying to survive. And now missing a tooth. I watched him that evening. He was quieter. He held a paper cup with both hands like it might float away. Every few seconds he'd bring it near his mouth, then pause, hesitant, aware of the gap. He didn't approach anyone that day. Didn't speak. Just hummed softly, rocking slightly, the rhythm of a man still clinging to some invisible tempo. June played a strong set. Full voice, eyes closed, arms open wide. The crowd loved her. But I kept glancing at Ricky. And for the first time, I wondered, are we really so different? Or just dressed differently? June once told me that street performers are just mirrors. That we reflect the best and worst of whoever's watching. But that day, I realized something else. Sometimes we reflect the parts of ourselves we refuse to face. And Ricky, toothless, humming, silent, became a mirror none of us wanted to look into. Not even June. Chapter 3: The Toothless Smile. The morning after June laughed at Ricky's missing tooth, the sky over the city felt different. Heavier. Like the buildings were holding their breath. I arrived early at the usual corner, guitar in hand, heart uneasy. Ricky wasn't there. That alone was strange. He was always around before a performance, lingering like a misplaced lyric, half in tune, half in chaos. I set up anyway. Tuned my strings. Ran a scale. June came a bit later. She didn't say much, just nodded and pulled her mic from the bag. She seemed off. It wasn't until the third song that I saw Ricky. He wasn't standing near the fountain or leaning on the pole like usual. He was across the street, sitting on the ground, legs stretched, back against a building, hands in his pockets. Watching. Silent. The crowd that day was light. A few tourists. A man feeding pigeons. A little girl who danced with one shoe missing. I played softer than usual. June's voice floated above mine like smoke, but something was missing. Energy. Fire. That unspoken connection we usually shared on stage was dimmed. And when our eyes met mid-song, I saw it, shame. After we wrapped, I packed in silence. June walked over to Ricky. I watched from a distance as she sat beside him. He didn't turn to her. Just stared at the cracked pavement. I shouldn't have laughed, she finally said. He shrugged. You did. Silence. Then June reached into her bag and pulled out a small tin. Opened it. Inside, a single rose-colored throat lozenge. The kind Ricky always asked for. She handed it to him. Still good for the voice, she said, managing a faint smile. He looked at it. Turned it in his palm. Then tucked it in his coat. I miss singing, he said quietly. Used to have a voice like a storm. Now folks just see a mouth missing a tooth. June looked down. That's not what I saw. He laughed, not cruelly, but deep, like gravel rolling. No? What did you see? She didn't answer. Because I think she didn't know yet. Not fully. But later that night, she told me. What I saw was a version of myself I tried to hide. Someone afraid of losing control. Someone who judged too quickly. I laughed because I didn't want to feel how close I was to falling apart. We didn't see Ricky the next day. Or the day after. On the third day, he returned, this time with a small plastic comb in his shirt pocket, and his hair tied back with a rubber band. Still toothless. Still wearing that same frayed coat. But something in his eyes had shifted. He didn't stand near us. Didn't ask for anything. He just listened. And I began to realize, sometimes, the most powerful performances happen in silence. In humility. In the willingness to simply show up again after being humiliated. Ricky did that. And so did June. But the universe, as it always does, had more in store. Chapter 4: The Fall. It was supposed to be her biggest night. June had been invited to perform at the Midtown Showcase, a well-known venue where upcoming talents were scouted. The kind of event that could launch a career. She borrowed a dress. Hired a makeup artist. Practiced the setlist 20 times. Even wrote a new verse that morning. But something felt off the entire day. At lunch, her voice cracked on a warm-up. Later, she spilled coffee on her shoes. And that evening, just as she stepped into the venue's backstage restroom, she gasped. There, in the mirror, under the bright white lights, she saw it. One of her front teeth was gone. It wasn't a dream. It wasn't a joke. A crown had cracked. Or a veneer popped off. Whatever the reason, the result was real, a gaping space in her perfect smile. Her heart dropped. Her stomach flipped. And the memory of Ricky, standing in the street as she laughed, came crashing back. She touched her mouth, horrified. Cancelled the glam team. Sat in silence for 10 minutes trying to think of an escape. But the host was already announcing the performers. And her name was next. June stared at her reflection. Her trembling hand hovered over her mouth. And in that moment, she saw not a rising star, but a mirror. She had become the very thing she mocked. And she had a choice, hide, or sing anyway. She walked on stage. The spotlight was blinding. She didn't smile. Just nodded at the pianist and began. The first verse wavered. Her breath was shallow. A couple in the front whispered something. She imagined they were laughing. But then, second verse. She let go. Stopped worrying about how she looked. Stopped trying to impress. Closed her eyes and sang like no one could see her. Like the only thing that mattered was the sound. And something shifted. People stopped chatting. Phones lowered. Even the bartender leaned closer. Because in her vulnerability, in her rawness, something beautiful emerged. A voice not seeking applause but truth. By the final note, the room was still. And when she looked up, no one noticed the missing tooth. They saw only her. After the show, a woman backstage said, "That was the most human performance I've ever seen." June smiled, a lopsided, incomplete smile. But it was real. She didn't go to the after party. Didn't check Instagram. She walked out into the city night, cold wind on her cheeks, and headed straight to the subway. And somewhere between 14th Street and Delancey it hit her. That kind of humility, that kind of crack in the image, was a gift. The kind of gift Ricky had been living with every day. She had judged it as weakness. But maybe it was the start of becoming whole. Chapter 5: The Encounter. The next morning, June didn't open her social media. She didn't scroll through filtered smiles or read the blur of comments. She just walked. No makeup. No performance. Just her, a hoodie, sneakers, and the sound of the city pressing in. She didn't know where she was going until she was already there. Washington Square Park. Same bench. Same tree. Same corner where Ricky had once sat, humming to the pigeons and holding a cracked guitar like it was a child. And there he was. As if the universe had decided they hadn't finished what was started. He looked up when she approached, but didn't flinch. Just nodded. Recognition without resentment. She stood there for a long moment, then sat beside him. "I lost a tooth," she said. He grinned. "Welcome to the club." She laughed, an honest, surprised laugh. Then fell quiet. "I was awful to you," she whispered. Ricky shook his head. "You were scared. Scared people put others down so they don't feel so low themselves." She looked at him. "I wasn't scared of you. I was scared of being seen, without the image. Without the mask. Now you've been seen," he said softly. She nodded. "And it didn't kill me." Ricky pulled out his guitar. It was missing a string. The wood was scratched. A sticker peeled off one side. But the sound it made, when he strummed, was warm. Rich. Alive. "Sing something," he said. "What?" He smiled. "Sing. You came all this way. Might as well." She hesitated, then reached for the beat-up guitar. Held it like she'd never held one before. Like it wasn't a tool or a ticket, but a friend. She sang. Something simple. A lullaby her grandmother used to hum. Her voice cracked. Her breath faltered. But Ricky just closed his eyes and listened like she was giving him gold. When she finished, he opened his eyes and nodded. "That's the real you." They didn't talk much after that. Just sat. Let the noise of the city swirl around them like wind. Before she left, she pulled out a marker from her bag and scribbled something on the back of his guitar. It said, "Don't laugh at pain. Sing with it." He looked at the message, then at her. "You coming back tomorrow?" She shrugged. "Only if you let me sing backup." Ricky grinned. "Deal." Chapter 6: The Echo of Humility. The next few days felt like walking barefoot over memories. June didn't sing. She didn't post. She didn't sell. She just listened. To the wind against the subway rails. To the crumpled saxophone player outside 14th Street. To a boy beatboxing into a soda can for fun, not for likes. For the first time, she wasn't trying to be impressive. She was trying to understand. And then, on a gray Tuesday, she saw him again. The man without a tooth. Ricky. Same coat. Same gentle eyes. But this time, he was the one singing. He stood in a narrow alley just off the park, holding a borrowed guitar, eyes closed, voice trembling as if it were the first time he dared to speak. June stopped. There was no audience. No camera. Just a few passers-by pretending not to listen, but slowing down anyway. His voice was raw. Deep. Uneven. Beautiful. Not polished. Not trained. But human. When he opened his eyes and saw her watching, he didn't flinch. Didn't scowl. Just nodded, again. She approached. "You sing now?" she asked softly. Ricky smiled shyly. "Guess so. Guy gave me this old guitar. Told me I had stories worth telling." June looked at him for a long time. "You do," she said. "You really do." They stood there in silence. This time, not tense, just aware. "I used to sing for attention," June whispered. Now I don't even know why I did it. None of it felt like this. He nodded. That's because this is yours. Not theirs. She hesitated. I have a show in 2 weeks, she said. A big one. Already sold out. But I'm thinking. You don't want to do it anymore, Ricky finished. She nodded slowly. Then added, unless you come too. He laughed. Me? I don't belong on a stage. June tilted her head. That's what I used to say about sidewalks. He looked down at the guitar. I don't know. She placed a hand on his shoulder. You changed me. Without trying. That's what real singers do. There was something ancient in the stillness between them. Not attraction. Not performance. Recognition. Two people who had seen each other at their worst, and chose to stay. Chapter 7: The Invitation. The flyer was plain. Just her name, the date, and the venue. No glamour. No promises. No pretense. But June stared at it like it was someone else's life. A month ago, she would have used this show to relaunch her career. New outfits. Perfect lighting. Maybe even a fake tarot or two, posted with a caption like, I've grown so much. Now she wasn't sure she even wanted to stand under a spotlight again. But she remembered what Ricky said. If it's yours, it'll feel like home. So she rewrote the rules. She asked the organizers to remove the barricades. No VIP section. No price. No set list. Just a mic. And Ricky. She called him 2 days before. You still think you're not ready? She teased. He was quiet. Then, I'm scared, June. She smiled. Good. That means you care. He exhaled. You sure people want to hear this? I don't know, she said honestly. But I want to sing beside someone who means it. That's all. When the night came, there was no red carpet. No interviews. No fancy outfits. But the line wrapped around the block anyway. People brought blankets. Candles. Guitars. It felt like church, but real. Alive. The lights dimmed. June walked out first. Alone. Her guitar hung by her side like it was tired too. She stood at the edge of the platform and took a breath. Then she said, Before I sing, I owe someone an apology. A man I judged, mocked, because I didn't see his humanity. Because I was too afraid to face my own. She turned. Ricky, would you come up here? There was a murmur. A shuffle. Then he appeared. Same coat. New shoes. And something in his posture, a quiet steadiness, that wasn't there before. They sat side by side on 2 wooden stools. This song, June said, is called The Mirror Doesn't Lie. It's about the moment we stop performing and start reflecting. And they began. Chapter 8: The Last Note. 2 months later, a video quietly went viral. It was June and Ricky, seated on milk crates beneath the gold-tipped trees of Washington Square Park. No stage. No spotlight. Just one mic between them and a song called Give Without Asking. No one had planned to film it. A tourist had just been walking by. Captured the moment by accident. But when people heard it, when they saw Ricky's deep voice echo into the wind and June harmonizing like she was wrapping his story in silk, something clicked. Thousands of comments. Then tens of thousands. Then TV calls. Interview requests. Labels again. They said no. Instead, they started a project, a small nonprofit called Streetlight Songs. Every week, they'd host a pop-up jam in a new borough. Open mic free food. Shoes for those who needed. No posters. No ads. Just music, connection, and love. One evening, as we packed up the last crate of the day, June sat beside Ricky and me on a bench. You remember when I smiled at his pain? She asked, not with shame, with wonder. I nodded. She looked out at a group of kids dancing barefoot in the grass. That version of me, she thought the world owed her something. Attention. Validation. Applause. She turned to Ricky. But you taught me something different. That giving with no expectation is where the magic lives. That the stage isn't a platform, it's a service. Ricky smiled. And sometimes the people with the least to give end up giving the most. She nodded. That's why we sing now. There was a pause. Then June picked up her guitar. Ricky joined her. They didn't play for views, or followers, or fame. They played because they could. Because music, when given freely, becomes medicine. And from that moment on, they lived not as performers, but as healers with strings. The square was never the same again. And neither were we. And maybe this story isn't about music at all. Maybe it's about recognizing the hidden needs in others, which we can only do after recognizing our own. The truth is, you don't need to force yourself to live a healthy life the moment you discover what you truly need. You just need a beginning. And water is a beginning. A natural, essential medicine. But one that can carry the power of your own healing intention. That's what you'll experience, gently and practically, in a 21-day method that takes just 5 minutes of focused presence a day. 5 minutes. To dissolve the walls that have blocked the abundance your body and your mind have quietly held. For years, maybe decades. Now, you are gently invited to live this beautiful opportunity that the universe brought to you today. Perhaps the first link in description isn't visible yet. It will appear as soon as we reach the minimum number of subscribers. But if it is already there, maybe, just maybe, it's your sign. A whisper from the universe. To take your quantum leap. And begin living your best version. Not tomorrow. Not next year. But now.